Hi everybody, it's me, the Fedge, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and today we have a very special interview with Tracy Elise, and her daughter, Sylvia Wade, will be joining us on the second hour, or whenever she comes in. Let me tell you a little bit about Tracy Elise. About Tracy, I see my life as dedicated to the restoration of equality between women and men in the realms of spiritual authority. The definition of the creators as God the Father has virtually left all feminine wisdom silenced in the realm of morality. The fear that the male of the species has around the power of their root attraction to the female has forced feminine soul wisdom underground. We see this in the lack of sacred alternatives in sex education and a growth in the secular, profane sex expressions of pornography, prostitution, sex for sale, the breakdown of pair bonds, sex addiction for many males, and sexual shutdown for many females. My objective is to allow the ancient and powerful sacred sexuality teachings to emerge from all wisdom streams: Egyptian, Hindu, Buddhist, goddess worship, Druid, pagan, mystic, Islam, and Judeo-Christianity. Christianity. This is a unifying temple. We are Gnostic and believe each person can access their higher power in their own unique way. So a little bit more. Tracy founded the Phoenix Goddess Temple of Phoenix, Arizona in 2008. She served as the church's mother priestess. She's a former housewife who previously resided with her devout Catholic husband and their 3 children in Fairbanks, Alaska. And Tracy won Miss Harvest Queen at the State Fair and attended the local Pentecostal church, where she said she spoke in tongues and served as a precinct captain for Pat Robertson's 1988 presidential bid, and so on. She's worked in many different fields around human sexuality, around religion. So I'm giving you a little bit of background. We're going to talk about this more when she comes on the show. There's a very special thing that's happening right now. Tracy is deeply enthralled in the final state. What am I saying? Sasha, you talk. I'm tongue-tied today. I can't even express it.
Okay, so Tracy Elise started this absolutely wonderful temple that I was privileged to teach in with Janet, teach Tantra, which is loving on all levels. And it was an incredible experience just to walk in this place, because you could feel the coherent field of a very, very spiritual place. And it was just a totally wonderful opportunity for people to come and for no fee at all, because it was just basically it was a love offering. They could do offerings, but they were able to have a wonderful tantric experience. And I use Tantra in myself, and in our particular branch of the church, the tantric church that we have, and because it's part of a group of churches all gathered together under the Aquava Native American Church, which basically is a wonderful, wonderful thing that has happened for the whole United States, because the Aquava Native American Church has legally been allowed to use sacred plants and theogens, cannabis, ayahuasca, peyote, and hands-on touch, which is part of what Tantra is all about, in order to have spiritual experiences, and that this is not confined just to Indians, people who's Native Americans, but is open to people of all colors, in other words, all races. It doesn't matter in matters of religious freedom, which is what the Church of Tantra and the Native American Church is about. It does not matter what your race is. And so this is an opportunity that the American Indians, led by James Moody, his group has been able to take the wisdom of the Indian elders and share it with the whole world through this church, which people can belong to no matter where they are, and the protection of religion. Janet wants me to wind up.
Well, yes. Well, I wanted to get to the point is we're in the middle of a trial. In 2011, the Phoenix Goddess Temple and the Sedona Temple, these are tantric-based, goddess-based temples, were raided, and it's 5 years later, 6 years later, going 6 years, and we're finally in the trial. There were, I guess, 40 people originally arrested, and most of them took plea deals. But Tracy Elise stands alone with one other goddess, and we've been here for a few days, about a week now, and we testified. We flew in from Maui, and we testified. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to fill in the blanks with Tracy. Tracy, you need to come over here so we're by the mic, because I don't think it'll reach around the corner. Sorry, we're tongue-tied. We're all so tired. We've been camping on couches and floors, and there's people coming from all over to testify. And this is anyway, Tracy, take it away. Tell us what's going on, because obviously Sasha and I are tongue-tied. I'm not sure what to say.
Well,
he's doing good. He's doing good.
Yeah, we're all doing good. It's there's it's a wonderful time to be alive in this exact very beginning of the Aquarian age. There's a shift from Piscean energy to Aquarian energy, and really we're at the beginning of it. But what that means to us and to Aklava, which is an interfaith ministry, it means that we can access these things when we couldn't even, 5-10 years ago. So this is really a gift from the First Nations to the other races that live here in the United States and in North America. The gift is, hey, these healing plants have been here the whole time. We know their value. You've outlawed them because you're afraid of them and don't understand them. And but in our indigenous culture, these plants are they're relatives. They are relatives of ours. They are a deity. Grandfather Peyote is a deity. Sacredness. To directly experience peyote is to take the light of God into your body. So it's, I don't know, there's just, to me, these things were always like something you'd read about in a book, you might see it in a movie. It was never something that you could access yourself, and not unless you were born 25% Native American. Mm-hmm. And I mean card carrying with your bloodlines showing on paper. So this is a huge gift that James and Linda Mooney are attempting to give to the world. They're succeeding. We met with their lawyers Friday night, the National Church, which we both have branches of Aklava. You have an Aklava branch in Maui. We have one here in Arizona. And, of course, there's over 200 branches. And I heard it was close to 300 actually. But
Wow.
what I heard at dinner the other night, we all had kind of a friendly powwow and brought each other up to speed. And the attorney, Matthew Pappas of the Matt Pappas Law Firm in Long Beach, they've taken on taking a stand,
Right.
defending the Akava branches. And they've been winning. But it means you can have it's like from the civil liberties. The federal government was quite certain that segregating white people from black people was against the law, and that truth came down from above. The feds knew that was the way it was going, and they held it in law. Nevertheless, in the South, you had various pockets of people who weren't ready to have that cultural change, and so they resisted. And you see this with gay marriage, and you now see this with there is a resistance for various reasons against plant-based medicine, against these indigenous ceremonies, hands-on healing. And the Phoenix Goddess Temple, I'm on trial right now, and that's what we were going to get to, is that 4.5 years ago, the temples in Arizona were raided, and we are branches of the Akava Native American Church. And from the first 2.5 years, most of everybody did not take plea bargains. But there's this thing that they say, delay justice to deny justice. And we all believed that when the government got a hold of the contents of our churches, the contents of our office, our administrative centers, that there would be this, oh, wow, we really raided a church.
Right.
And so for the first couple years, we thought that we actually learned at a hearing in October of 12, this was 13 months after the original raids, that the prosecution had not looked at our computers yet. Wow. And that they didn't think that the contents of the church's administrative computers had any relevance to the defense, and that they weren't going to look at it. They hadn't looked at it yet. And then they were telling the defense attorneys, if you want to look at it, it's here, but we don't think it's relevant. Now, we're talking about accusing these communities of being criminal enterprise in the year 2011, and yet these detectives are also saying, we're not interested in the contents of your computer. What's up? That's incongruous. If you're going to call me a criminal enterprise in the temple in Sedona, why don't you want to look at the contents of our computer?
Wow.
So, and gosh, it took me clear through the fall of 13, so 2 full years, to realize that none of the lawyers were going to do a darn thing to defend the church, to defend us individually, to defend us collectively. I did determine that a unified defense was not unheard of. It wasn't illegal for us to put our hearts and minds together and have what they call a unified defense, but none of the lawyers would allow it. Least of all, my attorney at the time would not allow me to share information with my co-defendants. When you're accused of a crime, there's sort of this paradigm that it's assumed that every criminal is selfish, and so every accused person is going to be save my own hide at the expense of anyone else.
Right.
And so rats, they expected people to rat on each other. They expected me to be ratted on. I don't know. It was kind of weird. And the bottom line is that we made a few attempts to get the church paperwork, to get our legal status to these 38, 39 court-appointed attorneys. Each person had their own attorney, but all of the attorneys were working in concert to discourage each person, to tell them, there's no way to defend this, you should just take the plea.
Right.
And so, yes, after 4.5 years, the trial's finally starting, and there was only myself and one person left who hadn't taken plea bargains and plea deals. And it's very interesting. I like to speak about this. So you've got 40 people in the church accused of something. I believe there was one person or two that they never found. And then that leaves 38 people or 39. And out of that, we had 19 who took plea bargains and agreed to testify against the temple. Whatever, they're like, whatever I can give you that's the dirt, I will. Here's the dirt. Just please let me have a lighter, don't accuse me of this felony thing. If you give me a misdemeanor, yes, I'll tell you everything I know. And so half of our people took that deal. They are the people who couldn't imagine, I'm sure, at any level, trying to stand up for the church. You've got to have a certain kind of a rebellious, I don't want to say rebellious, but, and then that's too strong, and revolutionary is too strong. What is the type of fiber in your being that you won't take it if someone says something that's not true about you? Some people accept that, and some people cannot. Right. So the half of the people took these plea bargains to give testimony, and I call them our hostages. And half of the people did not take plea bargains where they agreed to tell what they know. Instead they kind of like, I call them the ninjas because they kind of cut off a body part to get away. Right. Half of our people took a plea bargain refusing to talk to the state, refusing to say bad things about me or the temple, and those people got felonies. So half the people took felonies, refusing to talk, and the other half, which I call the hostages, and they're still hostage until the trial's over. They will not be processed through by the state until they've given that testimony and said something damaging about me or the temple. And in the beginning, they had half of our people willing to say these, bad things. In the pretrial interviews, I was able to talk to our people as witnesses. And once I could get with each of these people and simply say, what is your story? Why were you in the temple? How did you come to be there? What did you think you were doing there? Then their heart energy would begin to spin. Their heart would come into the conversation, and all this beautiful witness would come out. And even though they were the state's witness, they were saying beautiful things about the temple and about why they were there and about giving and receiving healing. So it's been a strange thing, and there's the attack on a religious minority, which everyone should be interested in, I think. And then there is a kind of corruption, a kind of a broken system that is layered on top of this story. Like, yes, you have the Native American church, the Tantra church, and the goddess or sacred feminine community. Those were the three religious lineages that we were representing on the whole. We were all under the Native American umbrella, the oldest religion on this continent. And then we also were doing tantric, which is God, goddess, worship of the male-female interacting, or we could even say inflow, outflow to leave it gender-free. And then you've got the goddess worship and tantra. So those three religions are what we're defending.
The Native American was the oldest. What do you mean by that? The oldest religion?
Well, it's not the first time we've been attacked. We've been attacked many times. And I remember thinking, I've got to find the right structure, the right container. What lawyers will tell you is you've got to have the right legal status. And if you want, legal status is simply what you declare yourself to be. And you do it with paperwork. So that if the government has business with you, they'll look at this paperwork and say, okay, well, you said that you're this. So we will start our initial interactions with you being this. Now, if you don't have a clear label, then they'll rubber stamp you with what they think you are. And in this case, we have been saying all along, we're a church, we're a church, we're a church. We're a spiritual community, we're a nonprofit community resource. And then you've got a handful of people insisting, no, you're doing something illegal. We don't care if it's your ceremony, your religion. We don't care if it's donation-based. We just still think you can't do that. We actually have had the state of Arizona and the county and the city detectives in pretrial interviews and during this trial. They have said things like, well, you can have these ceremonies that involve sexual energy or nudity or touching. You can have that, but you just can't receive any donations. And so they're admitting that the ceremonies are real, and then they're saying, but in our view, in our legal opinion, that type of ceremony is not protected by the Constitution.
But
so here you have this.
churches.
Yes, here you have some government officials literally using the power of their office to decide what is and isn't protected as a religious sacrament or religious ceremony. So that's what I wanted to say. There's abuse of the power of office in this case, and that's different than just defending a religious minority, although they often go hand in hand, and in this case, they certainly do.
So I understand it's if you have sincerity of your belief and if your practices cause no harm,
yes,
then there's no reason for the government to interfere with them.
Correct. There is no statement of harm. Usually when the state goes when a government agency goes after a church, there's some pretty strict procedures, protocols. There's legal ways that they're supposed to move forward, and the foundation of that is the Constitution of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Why did our founding fathers and mothers think that this needed to be written down, that there should be a separation of church and state? Actually, there isn't. It's not in writing that there's a separation of church and state. But when you enact freedom of religion, and then by the human nature, you'll have people in power. They will see a religious group that they do not like. If that person in power is a member of a religious majority, like let's say that they're Catholic, or they're Mormon in a Mormon community, or they're Baptist in a Baptist community, or they are Muslim in a Muslim community, then that becomes sort of the de facto reflexive moral center. It shows up, whatever that church group's attitude is, it shows up in the members of that church who hold an office. And so, we've talked about this in the trial multiple times, and that the fact that the people who did this, the people who took down the Arizona temples and schools, the people who are refusing to give credence to the Native American church, I hate to say it, but yeah, in this state, they're Catholic. I want to say I don't diss the Catholic community or the people who are the Catholic faithful. In any church, you could have rogue people, extremists, who go outside the mainstream of their faith to sort of take extreme actions because they think they can. In the case of, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but people who want to do the research, simply look up the Maricopa County attorney. If you're in LA, this would be the DA, and I don't know, but they have boroughs back east, but he's the regional county attorney, and he's the one enforcing these actions on these churches. And when you look at Mr. Montgomery online, what you discover is that he is not only an out and proud Catholic, but he is a Knight of Columbus. And what that means is that's a fraternal order. Men only belong. They are Catholics, and they meet, check it out, but Knights of Columbus, they are the right arm of the Vatican. They exist to give the men in the Vatican, the cardinals, bishops, and pope, to give those spiritual leaders some secular clout. And that's the oath that they take. And when Bill Montgomery, I don't even know, I'd love to know what year he became a fourth degree knight, because there's first, second, third, fourth degree. He became a fourth degree knight, and the only way you are given that honor is if you've been able to enact into law, encode into law Catholic values. And certainly taking down a pagan priestess temple, certainly taking down a Native American church where shamanic journeys were happening, would be part of his Catholic doctrine and part of his Catholic directive. As a Knight of Columbus, we can't have these things in our community. We're going to definitely take this out. And I know this sounds fantastic to people who might not be thinking that there's any kind of active crusades against minority religions, but you really only have to look in your own backyard to see these types of things happening.
Yeah.
Here in Phoenix, we just now, as in yesterday, a minority religious group, the Satanic Church, the Satanic Temple, had applied to give the opening prayer on February 17th of 2016. They were, and you'll see this story on the internet, and there's a 3-hour meeting on YouTube where you can see how this went off in the community of Phoenix. Here you have a tradition where people, pastors, priests, mullahs, etc., the traditional spiritual leaders, they sign up and take turns to open each city council meeting in Phoenix with an invocation, a prayer. And they say it in the manner that their faith says prayers. So you have a lot of Christian, a lot of talking of Jesus, etc., Holy Mother, not Mother, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, that kind of thing. You're going to have a lot of that because that's what's being represented. That's who's signing up. And then the Satanic Church, the Satanic Temple, signed up to give the opening prayer. And boy, did that set off a huge controversy.
Yes.
Percy, they couldn't even allow it to happen. And so they had an emergency meeting this last week where they decided that they would allow no prayers to be spoken versus having a satanic prayer or maybe a tantric prayer or maybe a goddess worshiping prayer. They wouldn't have liked those either.
Yeah.
So this is not in Maricopa County, yes, known for racial profiling. Maricopa County, yes, known for Bill Montgomery, who even after the voters in Arizona said they wanted medical marijuana, continued to fight it at every level and refused to implement it because he said that he would be forcing the employees of the state and the subsidiary governments into breaking federal law. So even though the voters said we're going to have medical marijuana, he's like, to heck with you. I don't want it, and we're not going to have it, and I'm going to use the power of my office to stop it from happening in Arizona. And, of course, he lost. Mm-hmm. Eventually, he lost that gambit, but that delayed the implementation of medical marijuana to some extent. And he also has shown his religious prejudice I have to give a couple stories of religious prejudice because this is painful for me to say this out loud about a mainstream religion in America. But ladies and gentlemen, you may belong to a religious group that is at some deep level enacting prejudice against minorities. And if you do, please use your influence. Talk to your priest. Talk to your pastor. Anyway, just going back to this, there's a deep gender bias in the Catholic Church against priestesses. They're not comfortable with the idea of women speaking on behalf of God, and in fact they have doctrine which expressly prohibits it. And so that's a piece of this. Mm-hmm. The Catholic Church declared a number of times, and I wish I could quote the year, the most recent one, but it doesn't matter. They enacted this thing that said Christians are to go forward, Catholics. In fact, I just learned from one of our expert witnesses that the Native American culture was deliberately targeted for extinction by, drum roll, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, the Catholics, the Mormons, and get this, the Presbyterians. They're the ones who actually, at the beginning of the 20th century, so it was 1900s, in 1918, these three mainline religious denominations are like, we've already wiped out this Native American culture, but we haven't completely annihilated it. There's pockets of it here and there. So let's enact into law that this assimilation is going to absolutely take place. We're not going to let any vestige of this culture, these ceremonies, these sacraments, these practices to survive. We want to completely assimilate the Native Americans. And they did this as part of a religious doctrine. So, and here we are, gosh, not quite 100 years later, finding that we're still dealing with this doctrine which says that pagans and Native Americans are heathen. That means they're godless. It means that our gods are not recognized by the Catholic Church. Therefore, we're heathen. Even though we may have gods and goddesses, they're not recognized. And so that gives license to take us out because we are immoral. And I'm telling you, listeners of this program, that's what happened in Arizona.
Right.
So do understand this, that the Catholic, the Mormon, and Presbyterian churches had decided to wipe out Native American culture. I can tell you from the perspective of anthropology, the idea was to get all the Indians off the reservation, make them assimilated Americans, and parcel out their land and sell it. And so that when the Native American church, the Akava Church, which is opening to everybody, is on the basis of these are the customs and the spiritual practices of the Native Americans, hands-on healing, the use of sacred plant substances. These practices have been saved and preserved by the Native Americans, and now they're giving them back to us, and boy, we sure need them.
And just a little aside, Queen Elizabeth, back in, I think it was in the 50s and 60s, took all these Native American children away from their families in another attempt to destroy the culture of Indians all over the North America, and never returned them to their families. They would stick them in Catholic schools and try to break them. And I personally know a friend of ours that happened to her. We sat horrified as we listened to her story about how she was taken from her mother and her grandmother and the women that were raising her in a goddess culture and taken to a Catholic church. And so she never saw those women again, never saw her family again. They were trying to, I don't know what Elizabeth's idea was, but it was definitely working, to break up these families and totally isolate them from their cultures. So finally our friend, when she was an adult, she went to live with Native Americans. It wasn't her tribe, but just to live with Native Americans to try to get that missing piece of her soul back.
Well, she
was devastated.
It isn't just Queen Elizabeth. You know, the Americans, especially Andy Jackson, have deliberately tried to annihilate the American Indians, and the Cherokee had a civilization that was just as far advanced as that of New York or Massachusetts at the time. And Andy Jackson marched these people across the country to Oklahoma. Every treaty that the United States has ever made with Native Americans has been broken. They have been massacred by the millions. The Bureau of Indian Affairs was set up to keep them under control, and it's really not the Bureau of Indian Affairs, it's the Bureau of Indian Assassination, and I think the evidence is overwhelming for that. And this church is giving a chance for the Native Americans not only to stand up for themselves, but to extend their wisdom to us all, and boy, do we ever need it.
Thank you. Yes, 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 I'm a member. Hallelujah.
So we're going to go to the cart and then back again in time, because this is very important. What's happening right now is the Native American Church, which is known for using peyote and marijuana, is to open branches in former Orange County pot shops. So there's a breaking story. This just came out, today or yesterday?
Yep, yesterday.
What do you know about this, Tracy?
Well, I just know that the Native American Church and the wisdom of the Native American Church just continues to be challenged. It's so sad. And so last fall, James and Linda Mooney put up money of their own. The church has never been wealthy by any means. And they invested or gathered, I don't really know where all the funds came from, but they put together a sum of money. It wasn't a lot. And they were able to place a law firm on retainer. And once this law firm, the Matt Pappas Law Group out of Long Beach, once they got involved, it became synergy. And so even though there's not a lot of money, these guys are in cars. Like, they literally drove over for my case in a car, taking phone meetings all along. I asked them, how's it going? And they're basically, You know, in my elders, James and Linda, we don't say that we're in any kind of battle, any kind of fight.
Right.
We say we're taking a stand. But right now there's 70 branches, and I heard this from the lawyers, Matt and Sergio, and they're like, yeah, we've got 70 cases. And I said, 17? And they're like, no, 70. 70 cases of the Native American church being disrespected, disregarded, that the status is being disregarded at the lower level, what you might call the subsidiary government level.
Right.
And yet you've got Congress as recently as November of 15, so just last November, saying we recognize the Native Americans, the First Nations have these relationships with these plants, and if anybody gets to have them, grow them, profit by them, it should be the Native Americans. So once again, just like the civil rights movement, you have it sort of coming down from above.
Mm-hmm.
The feds are saying this is how it is. The Native Americans will not be prosecuted. My understanding is that Congress enacted this and then instructed the Department of Justice to put out a memo, and the memo's available online for your listeners, where the Department of Justice instructs the attorney generals of all 50 states and the territories to leave the Native Americans alone when it comes to cannabis and plant-based medicines.
Right.
Specifically cannabis, and that they're to be allowed to grow it, have it, sell it, transport it on their reservation. Now, here's where it gets tricky and strange and fun and weird and wonderful. This particular Native American church, Oklava.
Can you spell that for our listeners?
Yes, it's okay. So first of all, just think, okay. Like, I love this. Okay. It's okay, L-E-V-U-E, ha, H-A. So it's okay, L-E-V-U-E-H-A, Oklava. It means the unstoppable river.
Yeah.
And so we're the unstoppable river of healing. But, you know, I'm just excited because
you were on
I was on a piece, yeah.
Okay.
Why this matters to listeners. Most people listening might really have an affection towards Native American wisdom. They might feel drawn to what is a sweat lodge, or drawn to what is sacred smoke, or drawn to what is this blanket ceremony that is their marriage ceremony. You know, you see it on the outside. What is it like to sit in that teepee or to sit around the fire? Of course, many of us as children might have wanted to, you know, instead of be the cowboy, we wanted to be the Indian.
Right. Yes.
So what this church, this particular Native American church, was founded by our elder James Warren Flaming Eagle Mooney. Right. His great-great-grandfather in 1918, his great-great-grandfather, who's also James Warren Mooney, this is taking us back to the story, at the House of Representative level, the Native Americans were going to be, there was a law that basically enacted the complete assimilation of their culture, meaning destroy it and replace it with American stuff. James Mooney's great-great-grandfather, James Mooney, got with some people at the Smithsonian Institute, some anthropologists, Sasha, and they went to the Senate. Now the House has enacted it, but the Senate has to pass it.
Right.
And at the Senate level, this great-great-grandfather Mooney, he argued that this culture was worth preserving with the help of the Smithsonian Institute. And so then the Senate responded and said, okay. And what they decided was the way to protect this culture is to form a church, the Native American church, and then people who want to preserve those ancient ways will have shelter in this church.
Right.
And this was formed as an act of Congress then in 1918.
Okay.
And now you flash forward not quite 100 years, but almost.
Yeah, almost.
And you see this gentleman, James Warren Flaming Eagle Mooney, and his wife Linda Brighthawk Mooney, taking this medicine to every single race.
People.
Yeah, I want to say to the white people, but if you're Chinese
people.
or African American,
But it's all
you're
people.
invited to the party too.
But the original
The idea is
white
all
and the,
people.
And the,
Yeah.
so
Basically what
circle.
happened for them, and I'll just say this briefly, James and Linda were involved in the prison system as counselors, as rehabilitative counselors. And they were taking people who came out of prison to the desert, having sweat lodge, spending a week or 2 weeks on a vision quest out in the desert, part of which might encourage this journey with Grandfather Peyote, this cactus. And somebody turned them in, that they were doing it with people who weren't full-blood Native American. And the way it had been up until the Moonies came on the scene is the governments were generally recognizing that Native Americans could use this peyote and plant-based medicines, and you basically had to have a card, a government-issued card that said, I'm 25% Native American or more.
It's a higher one.
Used to be higher, but it's 25% right now. If you're 1/4 Native American or more, then you actually have all tribal privileges. You're part of that nation.
Right.
The Native Americans are a First Nation within a nation, and that's why they answer to Congress and Congress alone. None of the subsidiary governments, including the state governments, actually have jurisdiction over the Native Americans. And so why this is so interesting with James and Linda Mooney is they felt called over time. They literally were asked by the leader of the Lakota Sioux Nation to bring this medicine, these ceremonies, not just peyote, but all the healing ceremonies to the Caucasians. You know, and in these ancient teachings, there's 4 races of man: white, yellow, black, and red. When we speak of this in color. And so the 4 races of man, black, yellow, white, and red. And James was told to take this medicine to the other races. And so then he had to go to court to be able to do that. And to make a long story short, he and Linda and the Oklahoma Church, Native American Church, ended up in the 10th Circuit Court, which is there in Utah. So when they were fighting their way up the legal system to get approval, they ended up in the 10th Circuit Court. So that's one court below the Supreme Court level. And at that level, a judge was asked to, they thought they were going into a big, long trial to prove that they had the right. They walked into this hearing at the 10th Circuit Court, and I hope I'm getting the details right, but all of this is on the website for the exact information.
Okay.
So I'll be speaking of the legend, and you get the details at nativeamericanchurches.org. And I'm sorry, what were we just talking about?
They're walking into the court. They're ready for a long
court
trial.
And the 10th Circuit decision, yes. And so they went in thinking, okay, we've got to defend the right to give these ceremonies to people who aren't Native American, and we think that religion should not be racially based.
Yes.
And because we're in the United States. And so they went in thinking they were going to have a big argument, and their female attorney said to the higher court judge, Your Honor, every day in the United States, a Baptist may become a Buddhist, or a Catholic may join a coven. People, I think it's about 75% of people in the United States will explore outside the religion of their parents.
Right.
Whether they completely switch religions or just go check it out, we are all, as a group, we seem to be open to what other people are doing when it comes to God.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. And so they won. The judge said, correct, religion has nothing to do with race. Bam! Like they didn't even really have a case. It happened super fast. So now, fast forward a number of years later, and the story of this is on their YouTube channel at, go to YouTube, put in James Warren Flaming Eagle Mooney, and you'll see the
M-O-O-N-E-Y.
Okay, so James Warren Flaming Eagle Mooney, and he and his wife Linda and many of the elders you could meet there on the YouTube videos.
Yes.
They have a number of beautiful videos of how he became a medicine man and why, and how the medicines affected him with his modern stressors. He had a lot of health issues.
Because he was living as a white man for years before they found him.
He was an undercover cop. That's pretty darn white.
Right. He didn't know his heritage until, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, until they found him, and they got a call one day, and he was missing for some reason. He wasn't right.
Yeah, he walked away, actually, and when he was 4, he was attacked by a band of boys and beaten to death, actually, to where he left his body, and his grandmother found him or somehow put him back in his body. And one of the things that the medicine people, the Native American church, they'll say, well, we recognize shamans as people who have died and come back.
Oh.
So James had this death experience at the age of 4.
Right.
Then he is in the lineage. Yeah, you did too.
Yeah.
So that makes you shamanic by experience.
Right.
Because you walk between worlds. That's what that is.
Yes.
And then you also, I believe, please forgive me if I don't get this right. I know another marker of a shaman or a medicine person is, I think that they, they're called to it. They do ceremony. I know for James, when they finally got a hold of him, and again, I'm telling you the stories as I remember them, but he had to go live in a swamp in Florida because the Seminoles are from Florida. And to be a medicine man, the first thing they did is cut him off from his life completely and stuck him in a swamp with the gators and the whatever's in the swamp, and left him in a shack where he literally was living in the glades, with water and, like on a house on sticks. And he lived that way for at least a year. It might have been longer. And in that time, Spirit spoke to him about why he was doing it and how he should proceed and what mattered. And so that was how he severed his life as a police officer.
Right.
And he'd been a real estate developer and restaurant and resort consultant, which is pretty capitalist white.
Right, yes.
He had some pretty mainstream jobs before the tribe. They said, we've been looking for you for 20 years,
right.
James.
He said he got a call.
Yep, got a call.
Are you James
Mooney?
Warren Mooney? He goes, yes. We've been looking for you for 20 years.
Yeah, that's right. And, we have to know this. The people that stand up for your and my religious freedoms, they do so at a cost. If you ask them at the ego level, are you doing this for your own, to make yourself grand? Are you doing this for ego? And they're going to tell you, heck no, this is hard. James and Linda have received death threats to their family, to their personal lives, because there are people in the First Nations who are very upset that these ceremonies would be shared with people who are not Native American blood. Right. And I briefly dated a Lakota shaman, and he explained to me these religious ceremonies are based on blood and where you live. So the idea of sharing the ceremony with someone who isn't living there and who doesn't have the blood resonating in their body, why would you even do that?
Right.
That's how they view it. So actually many of the Native American thoughts are that religion is always blood-based, right, which is a strange idea to us. So anyway, James and Linda, at great personal cost, have stood up for their right, Oklava's right, to share this medicine. And I know when we saw James Friday with Matt and Sergio, he said that they've for 2 weeks been flying around as expert witnesses trying to educate the cities and the counties about that these tribal treaties are real, they're enforceable. You don't just get to say, well, we don't believe that you're a church. To heck with you. We're going to smash you, and we're going to ignore the Constitution, and we're going to ignore the tribal treaties. And and it's true, everybody. If you are attacked by any of our governments, you will discover that it is a machine, and that machine will not listen to you. And that's why, statistically in the United States, if you are accused of a crime in this country, there is a 95% chance that you will take a plea bargain, because they have so many maneuvers and moves and tricks that they can do, including waiting you out for 4 years, that you'll take the plea. And they
threaten you with all kinds.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
they arrest and torture you. They killed one of your people.
Yeah, they didn't directly kill anyone, but the no contact order meant that one of our people was living without love and no one to watch over her, and we knew that she, through Medicaid, Medicare's, that she she wasn't able to live on her own without someone caring for her, and she died. So, but going back to this 95% of all people accused in our country end up taking a plea bargain of guilt of some sort. And that means that only 5% ever go to a jury where you get a trial by your peers. 5 out of 100 go to trial, ladies and gents.
But you haven't been found guilty, and you're always
so I am in that 5%.
Well, the problem
Yeah.
is that you've been taken to a criminal court when this is not a criminal matter at all. It's a constitutional matter.
I just wanted to add, Tracy's not even been found guilty, but she's already has things on her record when she tries to rent a place.
Yes, thank you.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, I hadn't tried to rent a place since the raid, since the accusations, and right before the trial started, I had my roommate and I began to have different arrangements, and I needed something close kind of to the courthouse, etc.
Right.
And so I went to rent an apartment, come to find out that even though I haven't been found guilty, in the computer system of the United States, I am a Class 2 sex offender.
Yes.
And criminal enterprise and all of that, even though I haven't been found guilty. And so I want everyone listening, if you're a citizen in the United States, you may have been brought up to think that we are innocent until proven guilty, and that the system is there to protect us, and we're not going to be punished heavily unless we're found guilty. But guess what? That's not true. That is mythology. That is like, I don't know, Andy of Mayberry back in the day.
Andy, yes, Mayberry.
It's not how it is now. And the machine is so heavily weighted to turning you into a criminal because it's how they pay for everything. And I just want to say that the state of Arizona is one of many states that has gone to privatized prisons. And so what that means is a for-profit company, and the research that I saw years ago was that most of these for-profit companies are owned by who? R.J. Reynolds and who? Seagram's. Who is Seagram's and R.J. Reynolds? Tobacco and booze.
Yeah.
Who is owning and building the prisons for profit? Tobacco and booze. And so they get you coming and going.
They have to keep a certain amount of their rooms filled, right?
Correct. So
yeah,
many federal contracts, many government contracts operate like this. If a private company is going to invest millions of dollars to do something to fulfill a contract, then that contract will be for 20 years. You want me to build fighter pilots? You're going to build the factory and the fighter pilots, and you're going to keep fighter pilots coming from me for 20 years. I mean, I'm using that as an example, but in this case, they're doing it with prison beds.
Right.
So this is a for-profit prison, and the contract they sign with the state says, you will keep this prison 90% full. If the prison occupancy rate drops anything below 90, then you are going to pay the difference. So here's the financial pressure.
Right.
If they get a plea of guilty, then the federal government gives them a subsidy to put that person in prison for X number of months or years. But if that person is innocent, and if the bed rate were to drop below 90, then the state of Arizona has to cough up taxpayer dough to pay the difference.
Right.
So if the beds are only 85% full because they ran out of criminals this month, the state taxpayer is going to make up the difference.
Wow.
And so how motivated are they to make sure that there's always criminals in those beds? They need a 90% occupancy. When I was in jail, I was jailed 2 times on this case, and I met people who, I'm telling you, I don't want to talk about it, it's a side issue, but they are manufacturing criminals. I will say this statistic. I saw a chart that said that for the last 15 years in the United States, that things that we think of as crime, harm to property, harm to life, where there's an actual victim, there's a harm. Those crimes have steadily declined for 15 years in a row. If you see it on a graph, it's an arrow that goes down, straight down. Okay, so our crime rate has actually dropped.
Right.
But our prison population in the same time period has increased 500%. Wow. The only thing you can do with that math is to understand that our government is manufacturing criminals out of ordinary citizens. And the people that I met, the women I met in jail, they were almost all there out of crimes of poverty. It had to do with they were maybe stealing something because they were poor. They were their boyfriend was selling drugs, and they ended up in there because they were poor. And prostitution, of course, is a crime of a poor person. So I don't know. What I saw was, and then people were being recycled into prison. I met a woman whose case was reopened. She went to prison and served her time for credit card fraud. Because they need bodies in the prison. She went to her mailbox one day and got a letter that said, "We have found you guilty of 2 more counts of credit card fraud from the original case, and turn yourself in. You're going back to prison." Now, she had gone to prison already and served her time. And they have this thing where if they don't do what they call capping your case, put a cap on it. Wow. So they can never bring the charges again on that particular thing. So I met 6 women in my 6 months who were brought back with their case not being capped. Why? Because they needed to put people back in those prison beds. And this woman had rebuilt her life. She had a mortgage on a home. Wow. She was she was working at a chain of restaurants where she was like their hot shot who would go in if the restaurant wasn't profitable and turn it around. She had rebuilt her life. And they put her back in prison because they needed warm bodies in those prison beds. And I'll never forget how that woman felt, or some of the other women. Right. I met a woman, a young woman named Sylvia. It's my daughter's name. So we became very close. She was like my daughter, and she was in prison and heading to prison and in jail because she couldn't pay fines. Right. And so in Arizona, if you can't pay your fine, then you can spend, I think it's $100 a day. Will take your fine away or something like that. I can't, don't quote me on the amount, but being in jail, being in prison counts towards the fine. So we're very close to debtor's prison, right, very close to serfdom. Yeah.
Arizona is a fascist state, in my opinion.
We're good about the whole country, but we're coming back, and our music will be here in just 2 seconds here, and we're going to talk about prisons again. We're going to turn this around to how we're coming through this.
All the positives directly ahead.
Positives, but we'll go a little bit more into this catharsis. We're going to talk about the accelerating rate of incarceration. And right now, where's my music? Should be here. In 1980, there were about 220 people incarcerated for every 100,000 Americans. By 2010, the number had more than tripled to 731. No other country even approaches that. Back in 3 minutes.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And once again, I'm your host, Janet Lesson, with Dr. Sasha Lesson. And we have Tracy Elise and her daughter, Sylvia Wade, will be joining us, hopefully, this second hour. If not, I hope she's having a good time. And before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and donate what you can, $1, $5, $15, $20, $100, whatever you can afford is greatly appreciated, because we need your donations, and your donations are what makes it happen for Revolution Radio. So thank you very much for your donation. So before we bring back Tracy, Dr. Lesson, what would you like to say? This is very exciting what we're talking about with Tracy Elise.
What we're talking about is a revolution of freedom that the American Indians, the First Nation, is giving to the rest of North America. The chance to have hands-on healing, to use sacred substances in a church, which is the church of spiritual experience, the way you symbol it, the way it feels to you and the people that you share your church with. And you can use marijuana, you can use peyote, you can use ayahuasca, you can use healing, sexual, sensual, tantric touch. This is a revolution.
I just want to read something from Indian and the Machine, WordPress.com, and they're talking about the Native Americans that were taken away in Canada. I am an interior Salish spirit dancer and 58 years old, and I live in Vancouver, Canada. I am a survivor of the Kamloops and Mission Indian residential schools, both run by the Roman Catholic Church. I suffered terrible tortures there at the hands, especially of Brother Murphy, who killed at least 2 children. I witnessed him throw a child off a 3-story balcony to her death. He put me on a rack and broke some of my bones in the Kamloops school basement after I tried running away. I also saw him and another priest burying a child in a school orchard one night, and the horrors that have done are, wow, phenomenal. But we're going to go back to Tracy Elise and her story and what's happening there. This is fantastic, Tracy.
Yeah, we'd really like to hear about just what was the temple doing. What was it like? My experience was it was a wonderful community center for education, and it was an incredible place. From your perspective, what was happening in the temple?
Well, and that's what's so exciting, and you know, none of this will be really seen until the trial's over, because the way this works, we can't really share with the world what all the witnesses have said until it's over. But it's over enough that we can talk about it now. But and they consider that, you know, like tainting the witness. If you hear what somebody else said, then maybe you'll say something against it. Maybe you'll, you know, they don't want you to react to what any other witness said. They just want you to speak.
Right.
So, but when going back to what Sasha said, yes, all of the witnesses in their free talks, which is where you talk to the cops in hopes to get free. They're free, call them free talks. Undercover wires. I don't know, just all the things that came forth, all the way through it. People spoke of this as a place of healing, a place of education, a place where they came to give their gifts. Some people were there to give gifts.
Right.
And some people were there needing help. And some people were both. They had gifts to give and they needed help. But that came through in all the testimony. And so one of the first things that happened that was really exciting is right before the December break for Christmas. It was the Wednesday before. The prosecution said on microphone to the judge, "Ms. Elise, no one in this courtroom doubts your sincerity. And then that was when Judge Stevens said, well, we can put religious defense back on the table. It was off the table because the state had done a motion in limine that I couldn't use religion as a defense.
Wow.
They were just like, no, you can't have that. And it was really a smoke and mirrors trick, ultimately, is what I realized. But anyway, so, yes, religious defense is on the table again, and we were to have argued our religious defenses this last Friday, and instead court was canceled Thursday afternoon, which was when James Mooney was giving his testimony, his full testimony, was to go into the public record on Thursday. He got about 40 minutes of testimony out, which was all about his credentials and his bloodline and his DNA testing that the FBI made him do so that he could have his church.
Right.
So we were there presenting, this very strong story on paper, on government documents, that this church is real. It's traceable to 1918 through both bloodline and his family tree.
Right.
And so, and then he had to start, they had to discuss the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which, gosh, so what you see is when you see things on the internet saying that James Mooney's a fraud, he's a bad person, just remember that what you're looking at is there are many people in the Bureau of Indian Affairs who actually operate again through Catholic. They don't have necessarily Native American religion as they're going about the running of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And the reason I say that is because when I first moved to Phoenix, we talked about maybe asking to put the medicine wheel, the temple healing, on res land, because I understand it to be sovereign soil.
Right.
And I was told by a man who was he was elected to the House of Representatives. At the time that I met him, he was a representative. And when he said, don't bother, the politics in Phoenix are this. All the res land is run by Catholic Native Americans. They will not like your idea. Don't bother even trying. And so that was the first time I'd ever heard that Bureau of Indian Affairs or that modern Native American resources were being managed by another religion.
And here we see
the morals, values, and procedures of a different religion.
Well, it got hijacked.
Yes, I'm collecting any references you can find on the Bureau of Indian Affairs crimes against Indians. Do send them to us here at
aquarianradio@gmail.com. But this hijacking, here's all these stories. This started in 1964 when this person was 12 years old. This is all in Canada, but they took them to the Catholic.
What happened here?
schools.
It happened here. It's just that in Canada, there's a much friendlier. Well, actually, the new president said, he said, I'm going to apologize to the indigenous people. I'm going to acknowledge that we killed your children and took your children and killed some of them and assaulted some of them and sexually assaulted them. I mean, he's admitting it. Good. So, of course, the stories are coming out in Canada because you've got transparency and culpability and admission of liability from the top. And so, of course, the stories are now being told in Canada because you've got someone calling for a change or acknowledgement at the highest level. That we don't have that here in the United States. No, that's not happening yet. So, and I wanted to say something as we converse because I had the privilege, my oldest son, Benjamin, got to go to a Native American high school that they had in Seattle. And so I got to go to powwows and attend a few things. And I heard a speech about language, in the temple were so very strong about the language. We don't say, when we're describing our body parts of our lover, we don't say rooster and cat, and everybody knows what I'm saying there. Rooster is a cock, and we know a cat is this is barnyard language, and in Tantra we don't use barnyard animals to describe our body parts, but yet it is the most common vernacular, and so when people speak of the First Nations, what I learned years ago by attending a powwow, I was privileged to be there. first of all, Indian refers to East India, and that the color of skin and the way the hair was dark and wavy. Basically, the whites looked at First Nations people or indigenous people and said, you're from India. You look like you're from India, so we're going to call you Indians. Right. So really, that's the least preferable term, even though many laws still use the word Indian. Mm-hmm. But if you talk to anybody who's First Nations, they don't use that. I mean, they might. It's been used for so long. But those of us that care about language, we don't use that word too much, unless we're using it in a historic perspective, because historically that is the word. Then we use, someone gave me the distinction between American natives, which we are all American natives, and Native Americans. Oh. And so Native Americans were here first. Right. And the rest of us are American natives. Okay. And then, but what I heard at this powwow was that, I heard a young man give this speech. He says, let's refer to ourselves as First Nations. We were here first, and we are a nation. And I thought that really made a lot of sense. I've been training myself over the years to use that as my first choice. Right. Because so much has been done to take the respect, just the basic dignity and respect, and that phrase gives the most dignity and respect. So anyway, I had to say that because it's weird, because we're all about language in the Tantra community. We are. Right. We want to use elevated language. We want to use language that sets us free. We want to use language that illuminates our mind and opens us to higher emotions. And so this is happening And so in the legal case, it has come down to language. They've forced everyone into taking plea bargains by substituting their words for ours. Right. We have words that we use to convey meaning, and when they wrote up their reports, which is what the defense attorneys were reading, they weren't talking about the altar of light. They wrote down, in most cases, massage table. They weren't talking about seekers. They wrote down customer. Right. They weren't talking about priestesses. They wrote down prostitute. So when you change the words, you definitely control the story. Like if you have the power to insert words, then you control the story. So yes, and.
Tracy, so you said, I understand you don't want to say what a witness said, but you witnessing, what did you witness in your own temple? What was going on?
Back to the temple, yes. Right. It was beautiful for me to hear how many witnesses. I don't know, 20 witnesses, 30 witnesses. I'd have to add them up. It was a lot. The case did collapse. The state did drop 9 witnesses at the last minute, which collapsed the timeline forward by 2 weeks. But all of their our people who were their witnesses spoke of the temple as beautiful and sacred. And then, of course, my witnesses who had been in the building and seen it as teachers or as practitioners really spoke from their heart that it was sacred space, that we had co-created through our efforts of money and art and hard work, sweat, painting the rooms in the middle of the night, because it was a labor of love. We went there. Our temple started with nothing. I borrowed money from my son, who was a waiter and a busboy in a very nice restaurant, but still, he wasn't wealthy. And he loaned the money to his mom and Tamara to move from Seattle to be in Arizona, to be in Sedona, actually. And so we started with nothing. And within 3 years, we were in a 10,000 square foot facility with 9 or 10 transformation chambers, each one a chapel to a different religion. We had, and we were very chakra oriented, as is your temple. Yes. And so, and then Wayne Clayton was there, also very chakra focused. We had a number of people. So really the church had this very strong focus on the human life body. Right. And the state is looking at the orgasm as a sexual event, or the touching of the genitals as a sexual, they call it sexual conduct, is to touch the genitals is sexual conduct. Well, again, that's a very vague term. The word conduct is pretty generic. Right. We were doing healing, ceremony, education. Mm-hmm. And so, and when you substitute specific words like healing for a generic word like conduct,
Right.
or this is specifically how the case has been built against us, they refuse to acknowledge that the money given was a donation.
Right.
And so we are saying
churches
donation,
give donations
contribute.
all the time.
Absolutely. And we know that. Everyone knows that churches receive donations and
They get
contributions.
tithing.
Tithes,
donations,
yes.
They get things. They get
And
everything.
exactly. People give their labor, all kinds of things. So, one of the biggest arguments that they've had is that the Phoenix Goddess Temple and by association Sedona Temple, that we were charging fees because
Right.
the statute for prostitution says sexual conduct, again, very vague
Right.
words, for a fee arrangement or exchange of anything
Let
of
me
value.
ask you a question. Remember where you're at.
Yeah.
When I got married, my second marriage, I went to a church and I met with the pastor, and they had a fee schedule. I had to pay, let's say $100 to meet with the pastor before,
Yeah.
and to do the ceremony, the marriage ceremony was $200.
Yes.
So they have these things on a chart, and
They do.
they do. So
They
what
do.
do they
I
call,
married.
what's the word
Yes.
they call that?
Well,
Don't
that's
they
still a
call it
donation.
fees?
That's still a donation.
So
It was
there's
funny
totally
in my
donations.
research. I called a lady rabbi,
Uh-huh.
and I asked her about her donation and did she receive, like at the synagogue, at the temple, if people are tithing already, does she ask for an additional fee or tithe to do a bris ceremony or a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah or a
funeral.
wedding or a funeral? And of course, all the pastors I talked to said yes. Generally, we do ask for another kind of like, it's like a focus.
Right.
You might call it a focus fee, but it's not a fee. They're asking for a donation, but it's like, well, I'm here for everybody, but right now, your family or you want me to focus on ceremony completely for you. You want me to bring spiritual advisement to you privately.
Right.
And so that's that idea where I wrote checks that were called donations,
Right.
that had a requested amount. To be able to marry in the Catholic Church, you had to take marriage lessons
Right.
from the
I
priest,
had
and
to
you
take
had to
marriage
give the
lessons.
money for each one of those counseling sessions where we explored issues that might come up as married people and how was that going to work. They were very good lessons. But again, we did have to pay, and it wasn't like they said it was a donation, but we did have to pay. If we didn't take the lessons, we couldn't use the church to get married. We also had fees,
Right.
I would say rental fees,
Uh-huh.
to use the space,
yes,
and
to
that
use the
involves
space.
someone setting up, cleaning up. These are real costs.
So
But what I understood was at the temple that a person could even not give anything if they didn't
Right.
feel like
Yes.
it, and they could even come back if that's what they
Yes, and that came out in testimony,
But
which
I
was
want to just
lovely.
say, our
Yeah.
culture is conditioned by all these traditional, let's say, quote unquote, traditional religions to pay something.
Yes.
If they tithe
Yes.
and they pay if they're going to do a special
did. Mm-hmm.
Something
service.
focused on
Something,
you.
yeah.
Yes,
And
it's
so that's
personal.
part of the culture. So why would it be so unusual for someone coming for a special thing with your church
Because they
to
don't
not
want to see it.
pay something?
It's not about us or what we were doing. They didn't want to see it.
Right.
And actually, in the beginning, I actually thought they did it on purpose.
Mhm.
But then I came through interviewing the men that did this, and the women, that they literally could not see what we were doing. There's something called confirmation bias, which is when the human brain begins to look for something, it will find the clues that add up what it's looking for. It's how our brains are working.
Yes.
It's called confirmation bias. Then if you set confirmation bias loose in a group of people who were all on a mission doing the same thing, a number of these detectives said, we really referred to us as targets.
Right.
Yes, targets. And so, and I ask, is that more like person of interest, suspect, accused? They're like, yeah, usually we use the word target. So you literally are like, yeah, we're in target
You're
practice.
targeted.
You're going hunting.
Right.
How much bias is there for a hunter who's going grouse hunting?
Right.
He's going to ignore everything and only look for grouse, and then he's going to do things to get the grouse to fly so he can shoot them. I mean, it's kind of like that, and that is kind of, what happened.
Right.
I just want to say that as far as the accusations of prostitution, we are almost finished with this trial, and I am confident that anybody watching the footage would come to the conclusion, as I believe the jury does. Of course, the jury is mysterious, and you never know what they're going to do. But over and over again, every witness, including the detectives, have said that, yes, the money was given at the end of the ceremony. Yes, the money was offered without discussion. Yes, it was possible that a person who had one of these ceremonies could leave more than the requested amount. They might leave less than the requested amount, and they might leave the exact requested amount, and they might leave nothing. And every single practitioner said that they understood, as a part of working at the temple as a healer, that this was how we were going to do it. And if you did a beautiful ceremony and the person left and you went back to the little altar where the receiving hands are, and there's nothing in the receiving hands, or maybe you thought your ceremony, you requested $200 or $300 because it was 2 hours or something, and instead there's a 20 there, or there's nothing. And what do you react? And the temple was an energy temple. So we felt and we taught, and people spoke of this, that you would pay it forward. You just would say that person, the karma. Now, what was weird was the state tried to say that we had a black book, that there was a book where we kept the names of seekers who didn't give money were not allowed to return and do that again.
Right.
And that was really a foundational piece to make the argument that our donation is a fee and it's not a donation. If people would try to come back after not giving money or not giving the requested amount, and then the temple would block them from having services, then it's a fee because we're reinforcing
Did they have any evidence such a book existed?
No, they never. No, it was so funny. I really early on I said, and you're saying we've got this black book. I want you to produce it right now because I know we don't have a black book.
Right.
And, there wasn't one. And everybody testified. In fact, there was a woman who'd only been in temple 3 weeks. And she said that while she was there her first 3 weeks, there was a man coming and going to temple, and that he had hit up, he was doing this twice a week, the same guy. And that he had come and done 90-minute ceremonies and left nothing. And then he came back and did it again and came back and did it again. And I said to her, and what was the temple's protocol? And she's like, that's the problem. There was no protocol. There was no protocol that would block that person. And then it came down to that when the woman was faced with this person that she had seen and done a beautiful service for, to, and with, is now suddenly confronted with the person who left her nothing, and he's back for more. It came down to a place where the temple could not force a woman to see that person a second time. It was a matter of respect. And so what came out in the testimony is that it came out that, yes, there was an occasion or two where a seeker would not give money, come back, then the woman would say, oh, I heard you don't give tithings, I don't want to see you. And then the temple would ask around, is anyone willing to see this person knowing that they didn't tithe last time or that they never tithe? And the answer that Janet gave and that I gave is yes, there were people who would see that person. Even with the knowing that they might not give the money or were very likely to not give the money. So how is this a fee? I got the detectives in charge to say, what is your definition of fee? And they're like, it's a price you have to pay. And then I'm like, well, then how is this a fee if people can give more, less, the amount, or nothing? And also, the detectives tried to say that in secular sex work, in prostitution and massage parlors, that the money for the sex act comes without discussion. But Dennis Hoff, who runs the Bunny
I was
Ranch,
just
the
going to
legal
ask you
brothel,
about Dennis Hoff.
yeah, he
Now,
testified that no,
you're
sex
allowed to
workers
talk about all
do
this,
the money. Yeah.
All the people, you're allowed, it's a public
Yes, I can
record
talk
here.
about it now. Yes,
Okay.
since
It's in the
it's
newspaper.
over, we can talk about it.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So tell us about Dennis Hoff.
That was
Let me just say a
fun.
little bit who Dennis Hoff is. Hold on.
Okay, read a little
Yeah,
bit.
Hold on.
you go ahead.
Just read a little bit, yeah.
Yes.
Can't get my computer to work. Okay. 1 second here.
Touch the mouse down.
Dennis Hoff is a HBO reality TV star and owner of the Bunny Ranch, a successful chain of Nevada brothels. He testified this week in the drawn-out trial of Tracy Elise, founder and lead priestess of the now-defunct Phoenix Goddess Temple. In an attempt to draw a sharp contrast between the inner workings of the sex industry and the religious ceremonies of the Goddess Temple, the defense called Hoff as an expert witness on prostitution and brothels. For more than 3 hours of direct examination, he talked about how brothels operate in Nevada and around the world, the services or various party options provided at his businesses, and various prostitution myths. But the main point of his argument was that a prostitute's motivation is money, whereas Elise's motivation was sexual healing. My business is about sex, negotiating, and getting the most amount of money, Hoff told the jury. It's not about touching and chakras. In your opinion, Mr. Hoff, am I a prostitute? Elise, who has acted as her own defense attorney since 2013, asked him. No, I look at you as more of a healer or educator, Hoff replied. Elise was one of the 40 people arrested by the Phoenix Police Department in 2011 after a New Times cover story said the temple's sacred sexuality, healing, and practices were more like New Age prostitution. The story, a Phoenix Police Department Vice Squad detective testified last week, tipped off the department and inspired it to launch an undercover investigation. Elise and others were accused of running a house of prostitution disguised as a church, and she remains one of 2 defendants refusing to take a plea bargain with the state. And let me see, I just cut to the chase. Wait.
Yeah, the last quote.
Yeah, you can read the article at the Phoenix New Times. It's got pictures. Oh, let me get this.
The last
wonderful
remark
thing.
that Huff made was
yeah,
wonderful.
It's too long for me to read the whole thing. And
I think my
Hoff, like Elise, is confident that she will not be found guilty. I think my testimony showed that Tracy wasn't running a house of prostitution. He said, think about it. If it's just about sex, why would guys have sex with a 60-year-old when they could get it for the same price with a 20-year-old? I think that kind of sums it up.
You know what? Leave it to Mr. Hoff to just cut to the chase. Well, and he's speaking of an economic, there's a thing. Men are attracted to youth, and actually some men are attracted to an older woman for initiation.
Right.
And actually men of every age, when given an opportunity to work with a kind woman that they find reasonably attractive, they don't have to be like turned on. You don't have to be their fantasy, although you might be.
Right.
Their ideal woman, their ideal type. But that's not generally what happens when people come to see a tantrika. It can be part of it, and don't get me wrong, some tantrikas are smoking hot, okay?
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's not always about that they find the person attractive. It's more that they're attracted to the knowledge, and they're hoping to be led into an experience of something new. And so one of the things that was super exciting, because they shamed everyone so hard and scared everyone so hard, and even during the testimony of our witnesses, 3 of our witnesses were told by the state, let us get you an attorney just in case you have charges. Right? They're threatening our witnesses as they're about to take the stand, because they were going to talk about practicing at the temple, and because the state didn't know they practiced at the temple, they were like, oh, we can bring charges. So it's been fascinating to see how hard they fight against our truth. You know, it's been interesting.
So I want to connect the hands-on sacred anointing with the Octava Church. Tell us a little bit about
Yes,
that
and
connection.
if I can do one little double back with Dennis, and then we'll lead into that.
Okay.
Because they shamed everybody, it's been impossible to have any seekers. I've had no seekers come forward to say, I want to talk about what the temple meant to me. And with the practitioners and staff, those that have carried on in the realm of tantric healing and shamanism, of course, don't want the state to look into who they are, which if you're a witness, they'll look into you. And then if you've said, that was dangerous, that was tragic, I lost so much, my life was shattered, there's no way I'm ever going to be a tantric anything ever again. We've got some people in that category.
Right.
And of course, they don't want to testify either. So the people who are practicing don't want to testify for their reasons. And the people who left it all behind because it was they were traumatized into giving up their belief. Either way, they don't want to testify.
Right.
So going back to Dennis, the jury in Arizona is allowed to ask questions.
Right.
And the judge has said, Judge Sherry Stevens has said, the state needs to prove that the money given was for a specific sex act, which they cannot prove and have not proven, because it wasn't, and you can't negotiate a sex act from a tantrika. She will look at you with compassion, because that means you don't understand how to get a woman to say yes without offering her money, and that is a moment for compassion.
Right.
And so Dennis Hoff. So I went to meet with him in his hotel room, which was a very nice suite. He travels well, and we were going over the questions. And we'd never met. We'd met one time prior. He came to Arizona for an evidentiary hearing on this case in April of 14. So I met him once then, just at the courthouse. This is my second meeting with Mr. Hoff. We're going over questions to prepare for testimony, and I'm about to leave. And I said, Dennis, would you like to learn the temple hug? And he's like, sure, I'm game. I said, this is what our secret handshake was at the temple.
Right.
Everybody knew the chakra touch, and this is like, when you learn the temple hug, you kind of have a basic understanding of what we're up to, so let me teach it. And he's like, yes, I'll do it. He was very game. And so we did the hug, and it's a very simple thing where you use the polarity in your hands, and then you cross the wires, and it feels different, and then you put it back. And it's just a simple touch and polarity thing. And he felt the difference.
Wow.
And then I said, well, would you like to do the magnetic touch on the chakras? And he's like, I'm game. And so, he laid down on his bed, and I much, of course, prefer to work on an altar of light, but, I'm a tantrika, and I'm in the world, and I'm going to use the grand altar that way. So, and so I began to do the magnetic touch, and using his own hands as well as mine to activate his ladder of light.
Right.
And he had moments of peace. He had moments of inner understanding. And I said, did you feel that? Did you feel that? And he's like, yes, I felt that. And basically in this exercise, you're able to feel, isolate channels of flow, and understand that some of them are outflow, some of them are inflow, and each one has a purpose and a feeling to it. And so I was sharing all that with him, and he felt it. It was awesome. And then he was willing even to do the holy anointing. And then his testimony was, of course, the state just wanted to know, did Ms. Elise touch your penis? And the answer was yes. We say wand of light, and part of that is that in our religion, women are the magnetic ground. If you come to earth in a female body, your soul star is anchored to the center of the earth. You are the elements of water and earth. If you came down in a male body, and this is a simplistic view, bi, gay, lesbian, and asexuals have more complexity than this, but I'm talking kind of basic issue. If you come down in a male body, your soul star actually juts into infinity. Men are literally like beaming down from infinity. They are the elements of fire and air.
Right.
So in this ancient practice, we associate men with light, and that is the element of spaciousness of air and fire, the sun. And the women are the water and the earth. And so in our soul star, the woman is anchoring to the earth, and the man is drawing down from infinity. And so now we can jump to the Hindu cosmology. she is the Ma, the matter, the material. In the Hindu cosmology, Grandfather Brahman is dreaming reality, but he becomes physical and real when Grandmother Sarasvati shows up and begins to blossom everything out of his navel. She makes it real. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get to the Latin, Ma, matter, mother. Mm-hmm. The mother makes it physical. The mother makes it real. That's the mother's power.
Right.
So, I go off. It's
I love it.
I go off. It's my religion. But,
I love it.
But, this is an explanation of, we've been able to present this to the jury. It's been fantastic.
Uh-huh.
And so I gave Dennis, just to wrap it up, I gave Dennis a ceremony, albeit, a little truncated.
Uh-huh.
I didn't have all my healing chamber and all that. But he gave testimony the next day, and I'm sure it caught the prosecution by surprise. The female mind, you just don't know what she's going to do.
Right.
And I asked Mr. Hoff, I said, we made it clear we didn't know each other. We'd never spent any time together.
Right.
And he was willing to do this. And he said, I said yes, in part to be respectful to Ms. Elise, and in part because I run a business. I've heard a lot about Tantra. I'm being offered a Tantra ceremony, and I'm thinking, I should check this out. Maybe it's something we should do at the Bunny Ranch. He said, I'm a businessman, and there's like a little bit of buzz about Tantra. Let me check this out. So he said I had a selfish, and then he said to the jury, I am not a spiritual man, and I had really no interest in Tantra. And now that I've had this experience, I'm actually going to look into it further.
Oh.
Wow.
And he also said that he felt things in his body he'd never felt before, and that it was not really sexual so much as it was peaceful, and that he slept he said, I have a real problem sleeping. I sleep 4 to 5 hours a night, and that's, if I can get 5, I'm happy. And he said, but after this ceremony with Tracy, I slept 8 hours solid without waking up. Wow. I haven't slept that deeply in months or years. Uh-huh. He said, would you call that a healing? I don't know, but I got the best sleep that I so needed. And so she did something.
Woo!
Okay.
That's
and so
great.
that was awesome testimony.
Uh-huh.
And then at the end, he's like, and yes, and I'd still be with bunny babes who are 25. So,
they're not mutually exclusive.
Well, no, and they're not. Bunny babes could be taught to do Tantra.
Yeah.
And Dennis Hoff might decide he appreciates older women. But these are just, these are each one's sole purpose.
Right.
Some men may never want to be with an older woman. And I've been around younger men who adore older women, and that's all they want. And why do we even care what people are doing, how they pick their partner? You want an older partner? You want a younger partner? You should be able to do that. That's
right.
what your energy is leading you to do.
Uh-huh.
And be free not to partner if you don't want to.
And be available to not partner. And that goes back to our religion again, where I'd like to share this little piece. This is Egyptian polarity from the temples in the mystery schools of ancient Egypt. And the teaching is that we have a soul star. We exist as a ball of light. And this ball of light lives in each person's solar plexus. Mm-hmm. And listen to the Latin. Solar, the sun, plexus, the center. Uh-huh. So if you go to your own solar plexus, there is within you there, and they've taken pictures of it, quantum physicists who study the human body at the speed of light, they're telling us, yes, there's a ball of light right there. Uh-huh. And so you can feel your own ball of light. That's why the ancient Latin for that body part is solar plexus. Uh-huh. They didn't need a radioisotope to know there was a ball of light there. They could feel it.
Great.
And that's why I encourage everyone listening, in a moment of silence in your room at night or in the morning when you first wake up, see if you can take one of your hands, and it could be your outflow, it could be your inflow, because let your body guide you, either hand, and pretend that your hand is one of those little metal meters that you take out to the beach to find coins, uh-huh. and run your hand slowly up and down the center of your body, your forehead, gently resting on your neck and throat, gently resting on your heart, your sternum, your belly, and let yourself sort of like feel what you feel when you get to the center of your core, because we call the torso, mm-hmm. Shoulder to groin is the core, and your solar plexus, the ball of light that is the you of you, is at the center of that core. Mm-hmm. It's right here in between chakra 3 and 4, and so people feel, I even asked the jury, I said, feel the light of your soul within. So in the ancient Egyptian teaching, that ball of light, if you're female, as I said, anchors to the center of the earth. And that ball of light, if you're born male, is going to have a beam of light that goes up into infinity, up into the realms of infinite possibility. And so, whereas the woman is making it real, bringing those particles of light into a realm of where the light slows down to become matter. Right. And how does it happen? It happens through the sticky love interaction with the female. So that's what slows the light down. So this Egyptian religion teaches that all of us will come to earth. This is a reincarnation religion as well. But everyone will come to earth. Your soul star, you will have a lifetime in each one of these polarities. Right. And then you will begin to come back again and again. And the ones you like, you will repeat quite a bit. And the type of polarity that you choose again and again becomes the grandmother, grandfather aspect of your soul. A type of a lifetime that you only wanted to do it once. You're like, yeah, I know I have to do it to do this point on my star, but I'm not going to repeat that experience because I didn't think that was fun. And so there's 8 points on your soul star. And the teaching is that you have to have a lifetime on each one of those polarities. So you will be born in a female body, magnetically polarity with males. You could be born a female body in a polarity situation only with other female bodies. You could be born a female body and you are bisexual. You are able to fluidly, magnetically interact with both males and females. Your energy flows, inflow, outflow, almost respondent to the person across from you. Or, this is the kicker, you could be born in a female body and come down with no magnetics. You came down not to interact so much as to watch. And when you look at the center of an atom, we have protons, electrons, and neutrons. And here we have this ancient Egyptian teaching saying that some of us came down to be voyeurs. Oh, yes, we did. We are here to watch. We are not here to magnetically have sex. And so there's, in this teaching, and then you could be male who likes female, male who likes only male, male who likes male and female, you're bi, or male asexual. And when we think about, oh my gosh, that means that throughout this planet there are people who were literally born to not have sex. They don't have to have sex. If they have sex, it is not a magnetic desire or need like the rest of us. They are asexual. Right. They are complete in how their energy flows. They do not need any magnetic.
Is that you're taught that you have to be male or female.
Fit one of these things, yes. How many people? This will be I predict this will be the final minority group that we will end up helping in our movement is the asexual people who are magnetically complete and they did not come down needing or wanting that kind of intimate polarity interaction with another person. Right. And so they go around their whole life thinking something's wrong with them because they don't get sex and they don't ever feel it. And they're like, yeah, I can do it. Sometimes my parts work like that, but they don't feel like they must. Right. Those of us that were born with magnetics, we experience this polarity as very strong. And it causes us to break marriage vows. It causes us to do stupid things. It causes us to have babies when we weren't planning it. It causes all kinds of things, this powerful magnetic. And here we have this ancient teaching that some of us are not susceptible to it at all. Right. And could it be those people are the ones running the Vatican? Could we have asexual people, and so they running the Vatican, for example, so they don't see, they look at the sexual magnetics on the outside and think that that's a weakness. But in this ancient teaching, it's just one of the points of polarity that each person must experience. And so going back to this teaching, everybody would have a gay lifetime as a gay man. One. Everybody would have a lesbian lifetime. One. Everybody would have an asexual female lifetime. Everybody would have a male. Everybody would have a bisexual lifetime in a male body. Everybody would have a female bisexual lifetime. Because what you learn, that ball of light at the center of your sternum, in each of these different polarities, the ball of light that is the you of you gets pulled and tugged in different directions. And so the Egyptian teaching is that these lifetimes on earth are to create the shape of the you of you, the soul star, who you are in the realms of light, that the shadow of separation and loss and tragedy and the light of connection to source shapes your soul star. So love and loss in this physical realm shapes the you of you. It shapes your soul star. And that's what this teaching is.
Right.
And then sex in this religion is about amplifying your ka, K-A, amplifying your ka. And it really is just about the idea that in these magnetic exchanges that we have, which could be a hug, it could be giving someone a foot rub, it could be holding hands or putting your hand on someone's knee. But as soon as there's touch, now we also have polarity. We have energy moving back and forth between two poles. And then this is what I was teaching in my chambers, which I shared with Mr. Hoff, is polarity touch.
Right.
And this, and then the Ouroboros orgasm. You know, the Egyptian temples, they recorded their ideas in hieroglyphs, not in words, which are abstractions of ideas, but when you have a hieroglyph, you actually have a picture for your brain to imagine. So this particular orgasm from the Egyptian temple is called the Ouroboros. It's the snake that eats its own tail.
Okay.
And so the Ouroboros orgasm is basically when we are aware of polarity touch, and then right before the orgasm and during the orgasm, we close the loop. We create a closed conduit. So the powerful energy of the orgasm, what we might call also the personal nova, because the Egyptians referred to that, what the word ka means is it's the celestial you. It's the you that is light. So it's the star body, the light body, the celestial self. So orgasm then floods the ka, your personal matrix of light, and that's why Egyptians, and I learned this on the History Channel, Egyptians would go home at night, dress up as gods and goddesses, meet in their living room, and have various forms of sex. To why? To what? To amplify their personal matrix of light. And when you see people who are tantrics, who don't let a day go by without having an orgasm, these people do indeed have a more powerful, charismatic matrix. And kings and queens and powerful, wealthy people, they can set it up so that beautiful people come and give them orgasms every day of their life. And do you think that some of them choose to do? Yes. Some of them choose to have orgasms with other people every day of their life, knowing that it empowers their matrix. It empowers their entire energy system to have orgasm on a regular basis. So a lot of these things that I'm saying, gosh, you know, we're saying some radical things in the Tantra movement. We're saying you are a being of light. We're saying your body is the sacred vessel for your soul. Your body is the gift from the mother. Holy anointing. Now let's get back to James Mooney and the Native American Church.
Right, full circle.
Full
circle. We have
like
less than 15 minutes.
All right. Well, all I want to say is that when I was looking for a form, you know, you look for a legal status. You look for a legal container. You want to be right with the government. You don't want to have problems. You want to be right with the government. So I was looking at various forms of churches, and we were a free church, which simply means a freestanding church, not aligned with a mainline. You know, you're not in a mainstream affiliation. You're like you've declared yourself a church, and you're standing out there by yourself, and that's a free church. Or you could even have a number of churches that work together, and they're still a free church because they choose to be what's called unregistered, an unregistered religious entity. And there's various forms of free churches. Well, James Mooney's church is a free church. It's an aspect of the Native American church. It does have a 501c3. That 501c3 number is on our website, your website, their website. And this means that to the federal government, the church is in good standing. And believe me, if they don't like you, they'll yank your number, you know, and more than that will happen. You'll be in trouble. So they've existed through all these legal battles, and they're still standing with this designation from the federal government because, you know, we're good people doing good work with this donations. One of the things that came up in the trial is, well, people call these donations, but you know, everybody on the back page, everyone who does sex work, they'll use the word donation. because they know if they use the word fee, they're breaking the law. And so, and then I said to the detectives, I said, well, how many of these alleged people on Backpage that use the word donation so they don't break the law, how many of them have declared themselves to be a community resource center? Mm-hmm. How many of them have said we're a church in the eyes of the government? How many of them have said, here's my nonprofit tax ID number? Right. You know, if they're talking about that the women on Backpage are offering sensual massage and escort stuff, and they'll use the word donation, and then they're comparing us to that. Right. Yet we're taking the donations and building programs for the community. And I'm banging on the table here. But I was pretty upset because how dare you compare us and our use of the word donation, where donations are actually helping hundreds of people on the ground, with someone who's using the word donation to evade the law. How dare you do that? And in this entire trial, we've been dealing with the dumbing down of everything. Right. It's a complete and utter dumbing down. As if Americans, as if the citizens of Arizona or the citizens of I want to say the Phoenicians, as if the people of this area are going to ultimately accept a dumbed down version of sex when there's a better version. I don't believe that. And there was testimony given that even if you don't like the temple aspect, you can learn these things through a school. Right. And every tantric person will tell you, unless you're doing classical tantra from India, in which case you will enter that lineage and do what your guru says. But the way we practice tantra in the United States, most of us, is we do something called neo-tantra or new tantra. And what that is it's all of the modalities and religious streams which have a mother-father principle. So you have, in the Native Americans, you have Mother Earth, Father Sky. In the Egyptian religion, you have the god, the goddess interacting. In the Hindu, you have the god and goddess interacting. Right. Even in the Christian Western tradition of alchemy, you have Heros Gamus, which is the priestess interacting with the king. So anyway, I'm going off. But yes, sacred sexuality is going to make a comeback. Right. Why? Because Americans, they like to reach for something better. And I, some aspect of this, I see them trying to like limit what's available in the marketplace by taking these commercial actions against the church. Right. They're afraid of what we will do when so many billions of dollars are now being spent on, yes, ladies and gentlemen, billions on erotic dance clubs, billions on prostitution, underground prostitution, billions on massage parlors, billions on porn, paying for porn. Right. And then there's all the free porn. So we have these enormous adult entertainment industries where billions of dollars is flowing, and the sacred sexuality movement is saying, you know what? Hey, we want to do it too, and we've got cool stuff to share, and it's actually healing. Great. And it's going to hook you up to your source, and it's going to make your energy flow strong. If you've got stuck energy, weak energy, we're going to help you with that. And so we're trying to sit at this big table of multi-billion-dollar businesses of porn and prostitution and all that, dance clubs, and we're saying, hey, can we sit at the table with you? And so far they're saying no. There's no room at the table in the American culture for sacred sex. Right. And we get called a cult, and I'm going to say the root word of culture is cult. So take a look at these pearls, these people that are doing uniquely different things, and see if they have a practice that might be useful to you.
Doesn't Tantra complement all the religions?
I believe it does, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
To me, it complements everything because it is a self-sovereign religion. It's really a spiritual practice more than what you might use the word religion. Yeah. It's an inside-out sort of awareness.
And practice Tantra. You can be
yes, you can. Yes. And the Phoenix Goddess Temple was quite clear that we wanted to exist to let everyone get a chance to meet the sacred feminine embodied. And so these were women who were saying, I want to embody wisdom, healing, knowledge, beauty, grace, unconditional love, compassionate kindness. I want to practice these things. I will embody these things in the name of the goddess. And so that was happening at the temple, and I think that was just
So there
too
were
much.
classes, there were all kinds
We had
of
classes, we had workshops. You know, the state's not upset about the classes and workshops. The state's
Okay.
upset about the one-on-one ceremonies in which holy anointing happened. And this brings us back to James Mooney and holy
Right,
anointing.
holy-
Yes.
So
Holy
you can Google holy anointing Tracy Elise, and it will take you to the Native American Church website where there's an article describing this. And basically the idea is that, you know, the gifts of the earth, one of the gifts is that we can take plants and make oil, and then we anoint the body with this oil. And the body might be resting on a feather bed topped by fur. This is the Native American Church. The feather bed would be air and your brothers and sisters of the flocks. And then there might be a soft bear skin or that your naked body's resting on. And then you've got the hands of the healer and the oil. And you know, one of the most beautiful things, and I've had this done for me, one of the Native American traditions, it's not a holy anointing tradition, but it's one of our hands-on healing traditions, is that you rock the body. You place the flat of your hand maybe at the base of the spine, or maybe both hands along the spine or on each buttock, and you gently rock the body back and forth. And I was taught that when the warriors came back from battle, they were not allowed to go to the tents where the women and children were without being bathed and anointed and rocked by the women.
Mm-hmm.
It's till that all the war was rocked out of their bodies. Rehumanized. They actually call it de-armoring. They, in this tradition, in Kudeshka, they'll teach it as
so that's some Native
sweet
American
medicine, Tantra, yes.
Uh-huh.
So, and in the Seminole tradition, James and Linda's tradition, women are the initiators of sex. James gave testimony in his evidentiary hearing, and he will do so in the trial if we're allowed to continue.
Right.
Because, you know, his testimony was cut short so far. But he gave testimony that in his tribe, a young man, when he's considered a man, you know, boy to man. He's given a knife, stripped naked, and said, now go out into the forest, go out into the Everglades, wherever you are, go up to the mountains, and we'll see you in a year. Mm-hmm. And if you come back dressed, fed, in one piece, we'll talk to you about you that you're a man. You're a man then. And then what would happen when this young man who now's a boy, the boy who's now a man,
yes.
thank you, who's taken himself through this initiation with spirit and the wilds of nature. He's had to create fire. He's had to kill something to eat. He's had to harvest. He's had to sleep safe from bears, whatever, or crocodiles if he's in the glades. This is a big challenge for the men. This would be very scary. My heart would be in my throat to send my sons off on such an adventure.
Yes.
Although I trust them deeply. They would come back alive. My boys would come back
they
alive.
Would do, right?
Yeah. But then I'm just saying, I know my boys. But then they would have a big feast and a banquet, and then the young man, the brave, he's now brave, he is taken by one of the elder women, maybe someone he chooses, maybe someone's chosen for him. I don't really know the process, but they go off with a woman who's older and knowledgeable and attractive to that person, and they go for 3 days and 3 nights and make love. Mm-hmm. And so this is his reward. This is his reward. I'm going to say, if you think that those boys out there in the woods for a year aren't thinking about the reward, I'm thinking they are. There's a party, and then there's this 3 days, 3 nights initiation. And imagine that every person's sexual initiation is with an elder who wants nothing from them except that they have a positive experience and they have knowledge. Right. So that when they go off to be with their partner, that they are not ill-equipped to touch. They're not ill-equipped to just witness another person in the nude. So I want to stop preaching, but yes.
Yeah. Oh, don't stop preaching.
Right.
I love
it. Yeah. So the Basques do the same thing with their sons and daughters. They send them up over the mountain, right?
When a bask.
Yes, and by the way, my daughter Sylvie would kick ass at the project of going out for a year with the knife. Okay, I just want to say that.
And we have 1 minute. Let
Yes.
Tracy have it. So
Yeah.
how do we reach you? Or tell us about your websites,
well,
donations?
We are moving into Sasha and Janet and I, Mother Medicine Wheel, Aklava. We are moving into a stronger presence on the web where we're offering ceremonies, teachings, how to cleanse your home. And so you go to Mother Medicine Wheel. You can also go to Phoenix.
.com?
It's either way it'll go. It's .org,
Okay.
but .com will take you there as well. So mothermedicinewheel.org, phoenixgoddesstemple.org, and you guys are
templeoftantra.com.
So, and we have an interactive site that we're working on over at Nation Builder.
Right.
And that allows us to do like events on the ground and offer, private invitations to you when we're in your area. Just interesting things like that.
Donations to Tracy, which site do they go?
PhoenixGoddessTemple.org is
Please
great.
donate to Tracy. They need help with everything. Gas, parking, a roof over their heads. It's been very difficult, but we're
doing great.
We're doing great.
We've always had, as Spirit is, we've had just enough to continue. Never without housing, never without food, never without a printer that has ink. Sometimes, given by friends in the last minute. My son got me an apartment, and my daughter's fiance, Chris, they got me an apartment after I was turned down. For about the first 6 weeks of the trial, I was sleeping on couches.
Wow.
So, but everything's beautiful. Everything is beautiful.
All right.
In its own way. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you very much, and much love and blessings, and aloha, and wait for our music. Just here it is.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Blessings.